Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm going over my top 10 model railway mistakes that you need to avoid. So I've been doing this now for way over 10 years, and back in my earlier days I certainly made a lot of mistakes, some of which ended up costing me quite dearly. So today I'm going to share some of these with you. And my first topic is track, and the first thing you should avoid is this. Don't buy second-hand track. Which sounds a little bit strange because there are lots of advantages of buying track second-hand, including saving lots of money. But all things considered, I just don't recommend you do this if you're a beginner and are just getting started. I started off saving lots of money by buying second-hand track. I thought I was getting bargains. It didn't end well and I ended up having to tear up my track and replace it with new track, which cost even more money and time. And if you've just spent an awful lot of time on your model railway, getting the track just right, laying all the ballast, doing your scenery, and then you realise, my track's no good, I've got to rip it up, it's incredibly soul destroying. So why not? What's wrong with second-hand track? Well, the surface of your rails is a very delicate thing, and these have to be taken care of. If these become scratched or damaged, they'll get dirty faster, which can clog up your entire model railway, and it will stop power getting to the trains properly. The issue with second-hand track is that you don't know how well that track has been looked after. It might look okay if you inspect it visually, but these scratches and nicks can all be there on a microscopic level. Let's say the previous owner has used sandpaper on the track, or perhaps they've used it out in the garden or something for 10 years. You just don't want to be using that track. And that brings me on to today's bonus mistake, and that is do not use sandpaper on your rails. Sandpaper completely ruins the surface of your rails and it introduces all of those little scratches that we're trying to avoid. Also, if you do it on the regular, you'll eventually wear down the rails so that they're no longer the proper height. For the best results, I've always used these. These are the Pico track rubbers. I use this regularly and it keeps my track absolutely perfect. These have been carefully designed to be just abrasive enough to remove all the dirt, but not too abrasive as to destroy the surface of your rails. And if you're interested in the Pico track rubbers, I do have an affiliate link in the description for you. The other issue with second-hand track is the material the rails are made from. Older track is made from steel, and steel corrodes and rusts and it gets dirty much faster than modern track, which is made from nickel silver. So if you're buying second-hand, there is a danger that the track may be steel, and that's really no good. So if you do decide to buy second-hand track, make sure that it's nickel silver, which is this kind of slightly brassy coloured track, and not steel, which is obviously more silver in colour. The next mistake is one that concerns laying your track, and it's one that I learnt the hard way. So if your railway is going in an attic or any place where the temperatures can vary wildly, you need to allow for heat expansion between your track pieces. If you jam the rails together without allowing a gap, when the metal heats up, the track will warp and twist and your trains will derail. And there's a couple of ways you can avoid this, and the first way is pretty neat. All you have to do is wait until the hottest day of the year and lay your track. This means due to the heat, your track will be expanded at its maximum, and then during cooler weather, the rails will sort of shrink back to their normal size again, and perfectly sized gaps will form naturally. But the problem with that is most people obviously don't want to have to wait until the hottest day to lay their track. So if that's you, you need to include the gaps manually. There are good and bad places to leave gaps though. Don't leave gaps, for instance, at the start of or partway through curves. This is just asking for trouble, and gaps here will cause derailments. The best place to include a small gap, and you only need about 1 millimetre, is along your straights. I didn't do this initially with my 00 layout, and during the hot summer months my track would sort of push itself together and bow up like this so that I couldn't use my railway, so I actually had to tear out sections of track, include some small gaps, and now it doesn't do that. It's almost quite magical. I did do this on my TT and N-scale layout though, and this track experienced no warping at all this summer. Do bear in mind though, obviously if you're keeping your model railway in a temperature controlled space and you've got something like air conditioning for instance, you probably don't need to worry about this. Next up, don't just power your layout in one place. Rails are connected together electrically using fish plates, and these can work great, but it's not a good idea to rely on these entirely to power your whole model railway. And the bigger your railway is, the more true this becomes. Also, the rails themselves have a resistivity to them. This means the further your trains get from your power source, the more the voltage to your trains will drop. On analog, this will mean that your trains will slow down as they get away from your controller. Don't like seeing that too much. And on DCC, the top speed of your trains will be reduced because of that. To get around this, you should try and power your loops of track in as many different places as possible. The more places your track is powered, the more reliably your trains will run, but obviously the more work you'll have to put into it. The reason this works is that wires have much less resistance than lots of rails joined together by small fish plates. Wires also generally have a low resistivity to them, and the fact that they run continuously without being interrupted by problematic fish plates means that they keep all of your track at the same power level. So my 00 layout is powered in two places. It's powered at the front where the controllers are, but it's also powered at the back where it's out of sight and the wires aren't too noticeable. And this actually works great for me. My trains run really nicely, but I think really I could do with powering my track in a few more places because I have to do yearly maintenance to make sure all of my fish plates are connecting properly. I think if my large loop of track was powered in, let's say, 6 places, as annoying as that would be to set up, I don't think I'd ever have to do any maintenance. I think it would just take care of itself. Okay, here's an interesting one. Don't lay your track on the carpet. Now, I realise I'm slightly at risk of sounding hypocritical there, so I'll amend my statement to don't lay track on the carpet if you can help it. And there are some types of carpet that you should never lay track onto. Carpets are dust magnets, and they get hair, dust and dirt trapped in them quite readily. You can vacuum your track often to get around this, and that's what I have to do with my layout to keep that in good condition. But you do need to use a much stronger vacuum cleaner than you would if your track was laid on a baseboard. Also, carpets are uneven, and trains don't like that. Model trains need a stable flat surface to run on, and carpets don't provide that. Again, this has been a challenge for me, and to get around that, I've actually had to nail my tracks down to get them nice and flat, thus making holes in my floor. Now that's fine for me because the whole purpose of this room is to do Sam's trains in it, but I think most people probably don't want to be making holes in their floor. You're much better off to build a cheap baseboard and lay your track on that. If you must run trains on the carpet, which I don't recommend, and when I do move to a better location than this, my track won't be on the floor, I will be building baseboards for it. But if you must, then you should make sure your track is laid on a short pile carpet. Fluffy or hairy carpets are just going to kill your trains, and with them costing as much as they do now, yeah, don't do that. I'm pretty lucky that my carpet is extremely short pile and it's pretty old, so it's been treading down very nicely. And actually, with proper regular vacuuming, I've never had a problem with it. Let's move away from talking about track then, and let's move on to some model train purchasing decisions that you should avoid. So if you're just getting started in this hobby, then chances are you'll want to get started with a train set. And on this subject, I say don't buy the cheapest train set you can find if you're hoping to use it as a starting point for a model railway. I'm British, so realistically if you want to buy a train set where I'm from, you're looking at Hornby, at least if you're looking to get started with 00 or TT scale. And Hornby stock a pretty wide range of different train sets, and they vary wildly. One of the cheapest available is the Santa's Express, but this is not a good starting point for a model railway. Now, to be clear, there's nothing wrong with these sets at all, and if all you want to do is run it around the Christmas tree once a year, then they are absolutely fine. But if you want to expand this into a model railway, there's almost nothing you can use from this set. The main reason for that is that these cheap train sets come with radius 1 track curves. These are the tightest radius track curves that Hornby produces. And most of their other trains, besides the basic train set locos, are incompatible with these curves. You don't want to build a model railway using these curves, except for in very specific circumstances, which I'll mention later. If you want to start a model railway, you need much broader third radius curves. And that's because most models are designed to work on second radius curves or broader, so by choosing third radius curves, you're basically ensuring that your layout will be compatible with almost everything. Hornby's Network Traveller train set then is one of the cheapest Hornby sets that contains third radius curves, and you can use these when you build your permanent layout. The Santa's Express and Network Traveller train sets are also missing something else though. Points, or switches if you're in America. These are absolutely essential to getting started in model railways, because just a single set of points can open up so many possibilities. You can build a branch line, you can build a siding, you can start to do some shunting. It just breaks up that monotonous loop of track. A loop of track is fine, again, for the Christmas tree, perfectly fun, but it gets boring pretty quickly. A set of points can add a lot of much needed variety. The cheapest Hornby train set I can find with third radius curves and a set of points is the iTraveller. And as you can see, it is more expensive than the others, but I do think you get what you pay for here, and you'll enjoy this set a lot more than you will the cheaper sets. Right, so the tight curves issue is so important that I'm actually including it as an item in this video. So my next don't is don't buy tight curves, unless you're doing it for a specific reason, of course. It's quite easy to go shopping for track. You can find it easily, order it, buy it, whatever, and build your model railway with it, but you need to pay attention to the radius of the curves. Tight first radius curves like this seem very handy because they're small and they don't take up too much space, but very few models are compatible with these curves, and if you try to use them, you will run into trouble with derailments and couplings and that kind of thing. This rule applies to most layouts, but like I mentioned earlier on, there are some exceptions. So if you want to build a small industrial layout with tiny 040s and short wheelbase rolling stock, then first radius curves are your friend, and in fact they will be the most realistic choice. But if you ever want to run larger steam locomotives or diesels or bogie coaches or anything like that on your railway, you need to be choosing larger radius curves. Use second radius curves as an absolute minimum and aim to use third or even fourth radius curves wherever possible. Next, don't pay full RRP prices for your models. New models are extremely expensive, and you might assume that it's cheapest to go directly to a manufacturer and buy your models from them, but actually most of the time this is not the case. And that might seem confusing, and I do have a video up here if you're interested in why that is. But it is true, and if you use a retailer to buy your models, and there's a lot of them out there, you can usually save at least 10 to 15%, which obviously makes a massive difference. Also, if you hold back on purchasing new releases, there's a chance that model might turn up in the sale in the future, and you can grab a bargain and save even more money. You do need to be careful with this though, because some popular products can sell out way before they get to this stage. So if you have decided to hold back on purchasing a product you're interested in, it's well worth keeping an eye on retailer stock levels. If some retailers start selling out or others are showing low stock levels, you might need to abandon your strategy and just buy what you want or risk missing out. So this doesn't work all of the time, but I'd estimate about 30% of the time this can be a good tactic that works for saving money. Next up then, let's talk about what you should never do when you're trying to maintain your trains. And this is a massive one. Don't use WD-40 to lubricate anything on your model railway. And this one crops up absolutely all the time, and I think that's because most people have got a can of this to hand, and when they hear you've got to lubricate your locomotives, they think, oh great, I'll just use this. And you can't blame them, because look, it says on the can, stops squeaks, drives out moisture, cleans and protects, loosens rusted parts, frees sticky mechanisms. It sounds absolutely perfect, but it's not, and it can be extremely bad for your model trains. And the first reason is this one in the middle, the cleaning and protecting aspect. WD-40 is a solvent, and that means that it will do damage to things like paint jobs. And because of the way you apply WD-40, i.e. having it burst out of a pressurized can like that, means that it's likely to go everywhere. Next, WD-40 cleans things brilliantly, but it also evaporates quickly and leaves bearings and gears dry, so it's not really an ideal lubricant because it doesn't lubricate anything for long. It's also quite thick, and that's because it's designed to be used on big things like power tools and doors and things. For much finer uses, i.e. model trains, you need to be using a much thinner, lighter oil. One that can really get into all of these small nooks and crannies and lubricate these tiny machines in the proper way. Now, lots of model railway manufacturers try to sell you all sorts of different lubricants that are designed specifically to be used on model trains. And I have to tell you, I've never used them and I've never regretted that. All you actually need is just one type of lubricant. Or if you want to do the job properly, you should have 3 different types in your arsenal. The main one that you need to have is the Hemline sewing machine oil, which is a perfectly thin lubricant, and for years and years I used that oil and nothing but that oil. And you need to be using oil for things like motor bearings and axles, that kind of thing, but for gears you could use a grease, which kind of stays on there and lasts a little bit longer than the oil does. So you need a light silicone grease for this. Silicone grease doesn't eat away at the plastic. You can also use petroleum jelly like Vaseline for lubricating parts that need to conduct electricity, such as pickups or bearings that pick up. Vaseline is not plastic safe though, so you need to be quite precise about how you apply it. And I'd recommend using a syringe like this so that you can spot it right where it needs to be without getting it on plastic parts. My next maintenance don't forget to clean the wheels of your rolling stock. We all know how important it is to keep your track clean and to keep your loco wheels clean, but we often forget to clean the wheels of our rolling stock. Which is understandable because who cares about rolling stock wheels? These aren't picking up power generally, so if these get dirty, who cares? Your trains are still going to run, aren't they? Well, believe it or not, rolling stock wheels do still get dirty. Sometimes extremely dirty if you use them quite a lot. And what happens is this: you spend all this time cleaning your loco wheels so that they're spotless, you wipe all of your tracks so that's perfect, and then you take your dirty rolling stock, run that on your nice clean track. The gunk from the wheels gets spread all around the track, so that gets dirty faster, and then your locomotives come along and they pick up that dirt and their wheels get dirty faster, and before you know it, once again your trains aren't running properly anymore. And then of course you've got to spend even more time cleaning your loco wheels and your track yet again. So clean those loco wheels, clean your track, but also clean your rolling stock wheels, and then everything is nice and clean, and it should stay that way a little bit longer. And now then we come to number 10. This is the golden rule, the one thing that you should never ever do, and that is this: don't let anyone tell you how you should or should not be running your model railway. There are a lot of people in this hobby. Some of them have been doing this for many years and they've got a pretty idea of the right and the wrong way of doing things, or at least they think they do. Now, if you're one of those people who likes to show off what they've created, either by taking it to an exhibition or inviting people to see it or posting pictures and videos of it online, chances are you are going to get comments from people who know best, as they always do, saying, oh, you should be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that, that rolling stock doesn't match that loco, this piece of scenery is out of time with the rest of the layout. Now, some of it will be unpleasant nitpicking, some of it will be from people who are genuinely well-meaning and are trying to give you constructive criticism. But if you listen to it all and you try and act on all of it, you will not enjoy this hobby anymore. You'll spend all of your time trying to please others and you'll forget to spend time pleasing yourself. So the golden rule is this: build and operate your railway exactly as you want to. If you want to try and make it as accurate and as realistic as possible, then great, do that. But if you want to have some fun, if you don't really care about accuracy, and you just want to make things look pretty and work nicely, that is just as valuable. In fact, sometimes even more so. Personally, I enjoy seeing the latter more than I do the former. Now, that isn't to say that you shouldn't go out and look for advice, because there's a lot of knowledgeable people out there that really can help you out. I'm just pointing out the difference between advice that you've asked for and sought out and unsolicited advice that's just been shoved down your throat. There are quite a few fuddy-duddies in this hobby that think everything should be done just so, and they're not afraid to tell you about it if they think you're doing something wrong. What I'm saying is that you don't have to be like that. If you want to be a pedantic rivet counting nutcase, that's absolutely fine, and that can create some amazing results. But if you want to take it easy, do it your way and sod everybody else, that is perfectly fine as well, and you should never be scared to do that. But that is all I have to say. Those are 10 things that you should never do, and I think rule 1, that's what we call number 10, is possibly the most important. But anyway, what have you done in your model railway lifetime that you regret? Are there any don'ts that you particularly have that you would like to share? Please do pop those down in the comments. For now though, thank you so much for watching. Happy model railwaying, and if you're just getting started in this hobby, welcome, and I really hope you enjoy it. For now though, I'll sign off. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I'll catch you on the next one. Alright, cheers folks.